Hello and welcome to the Earth Observed podcast, a podcast where I sit down with the founders, the technical leaders, and the minds shaping the future of Earth data, geospatial technology, and atmospheric AI across Europe, North America, and beyond. In each episode, we take a vertical dive into a topic chosen by our guests, giving you a front row seat to the ideas, the tools, and the challenges that enable innovation from space to subsurface, and everything in between. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Felix, the CTO and co-founder of Another Earth, a startup which is developing a synthetic data and simulation engine to unlock insights from Earth observation data. Felix, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Felix, I guess, first things first, regarding the audience, why don't you just give us a very, very brief and top-level insight into who you are and what what it is that Another Earth actually does?
Yeah, sure. Well, the very short version you said already.
Yeah.
I'm the CTO of Another Earth. We're a company based in Vienna, Austria, and London. I started the company with my co-founder Maya Pindeus about 1.5 years ago now. Time flies by. And yeah, so we're building technology to help the training of AI models in the context of Earth observation. So what we're doing is we're creating synthetic satellite and also drone data, which can then be used to train AI models to work with Earth observation data in various forms. And help training better and more accurate models for a large variety of applications in that domain.
Okay. Amazing. So I think what would be good here is for us to take it back to the beginning, learning a little bit more about your professional background. So I'm very keen to understand what drew you into this field in the first place.
It's a longer story. It's I come originally from a very different background. I'm from a visual effects and animation background originally, so I spent almost 20 years working in visual effects. I worked for like all the major car brands and commercials. I also worked on a couple of Hollywood movies, Guardians of the Galaxy, and some others. Um, that was a good time, and like about 10 years ago or so, I moved back to Vienna, my hometown, where I'm now again, and started my own visual effects studio. And during that time, we were working a lot, or we started working a lot with geospatial data as well, mainly for map visualizations for documentaries, like imagine Indiana Jones style map, something showing where you are in a nice and innovative way. So that was like the first contact with geospatial data and working with satellite imagery, working with elevation data, and so on. And also at the same time, generative AI became much more a thing, also in the visual effects space. And so that was like a glimpse into different areas, which started to interest me more and more. And at the same time, visual effects is a very rough business, let's put it like that. So long story short, after a while, I decided I want to do something different after all this time. And it wasn't immediately Another Earth, but it was already AI and geospatial data. And that I co-founded another startup, which was about digital twin technology, using gaming technology. So the idea there was to use satellite imagery, analyze it, and automatically create game-ready walls out of it for a cycling game. That was the idea, indoor cycling. I'm a huge cycling fan, so that was the idea back then. That worked okay for a year, but ultimately never made it to market, unfortunately. And yeah, during that time, I met with Maya, was also leaving her business, and then we decided to start another Earth together.
Do you know what? I don't think we've had, nor will we have at any point, someone on Earth Observed who has worked on Guardians of the Galaxy. And I know that there is
I don't
a
know. I
few
mean,
people.
yeah, it's quite a few people actually work on these on these movies, so you would be surprised how many there are.
Well,
But yeah, let's
I
see, let's
mean,
see.
yeah, let's see. Let's see. Never say never, but I know that there will be a few people that I know personally watching this that would be a huge fan of that and would be queuing up, no doubt, to be asked.
Yeah.
I guess as well, I like to learn about influence, and I'm keen to understand if there's any pivotal moments or mentors that ultimately shaped your career path, and that could be your time spent in VFX, and how you've landed to where you've landed today.
Yeah. Well, for me, a key moment was that, I kind of really like what I'm doing and what I've been doing, and that is, working with 3D technology and rendering and this idea of creating, digital worlds out of a computer, and that also works incredibly well with the newer way of doing it by using generative AI. But for a long time, basically visual effects in commercials or movies was the only way to make a living of that technology. And as I said, it's quite a rough business because, yeah, to be honest, a lot of people like working on Guardians of the Galaxy and the likes, which doesn't help the business. Let's put it like that. Um, um, and so for a while, I was thinking about other ways of doing what I love. And there's of course gaming, which, as I said, was like my initial idea of going down there. But then at one point, I saw like an online seminar or something where it wasn't even a visual effects studio, it was a consultancy. They were just using the 3D software I was using to generate fake images of tooth implants, or yeah, like infrared images. um, and that was, for me, I mean, that's not super exciting, but for me that was like such a new way of using what I love to do in a completely new commercial context, in by generating fake training data to then train an AI model and apply it on real imagery. That kind of blew my mind, and I would say ultimately sparked the whole idea for another Earth. So basically, it was moving from the tooth implants straight to geospatial data.
Yeah, I was going to ask because as much as there might be some pivotal moments or mentors that have maybe shaped the career path that you've taken, but I also believe that the journey that you've been on so far will also influence how you maybe perceive Earth observation data, or how you maybe use that type of data, to what extent you want to solve problems with that data. I'm keen to understand how has your career personally actually influenced the way you actually you
Mhm.
see Earth observation data.
Yeah, I think it has, of course, both advantages and disadvantages. Coming from this, like from a very different vertical, uh, as you say, I think I have a quite new view of looking at this stuff. Like most people working in this field, I would assume 99% or 90% come straight from out of academia
Yeah.
and have studied in those areas. So of course I had to learn a lot in recent years, but it helps to look at it in a way, um, which is crucial for our company in like how can we essentially take this data and modify it. Like I look less at the actual data and technology and how it works and how the spectral bands should be configured and whatnot. I just look at the result and more what can be done with it and how can we go there using synthetic data or not. I don't care. So yeah, I think I'm a very broad thinker and not fixed on a very tiny subtopic, as there are so many in Earth observation, be it working in agriculture. You could work just in agriculture analysis for your whole life and wouldn't have learned everything. But yeah, I think for our business it helps a lot that I have like a more of an overview position, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what I think as well? That for a lot of people who are maybe outside of this industry, I think you could definitely serve as, a person of interest, a person of influence for people to make that leap into the industry, and for more people that maybe haven't come through the traditional kind of academia route to get to this sort of
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
Um,
You know what? For me, it was really what actually blew my mind when I really started this business. I had like a rough idea how Earth observation data is used and what can be done with it, but I think I had like 1% of what is actually possible and what is already being done just using satellite data and drone imagery. It's absolutely amazing. It's
yeah.
spans almost all verticals that are
Yeah.
possible. So that alone, I think, makes this field, yeah, insanely exciting.
Absolutely. And I think those people who are watching, regardless of their seniority and skill level, who could be interested in jumping into this particular industry, I'm sure that they would be very keen to understand from your own career, even if it isn't necessarily the same as theirs, what skills from your earlier positions that you still lean on heavily now in correlation with the work you're doing at Another Earth.
It has to do a lot, with
Yeah,
images, so understanding, how digital imagery works, how it can be manipulated, how it can be compressed and analyzed. I think those are the fundamentals, which I already learned when I was studying, without even thinking about Earth observation. Um, and at the same time, um, obviously, all cloud technology is getting more and more important. So knowing how to work in the cloud and how to store and process data um, is I would say super important.
yeah,
Um, and the good thing about is, I remember when I started with visual effects, like a single license for whatever software was like 5,000 euros or more. That has changed. That has changed a little bit, but it's still expensive. But anything Earth observation and also AI related, you have tons of free tools and resources
sure.
where you can learn for free. So there's basically nothing holding you back.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I actually, I must put a post out onto LinkedIn about free resources because I think that would be incredibly important for people to actually realize what is out there for them to take advantage of. But I guess in regards to yourself, you are living proof that overlap exists with this particular industry, and that once again, I'm going to say it, you don't necessarily need to take traditional routes to find yourself
Yeah.
thriving and enjoying this particular space. I guess before we do jump more into the story behind Another Earth and learning a little bit more about the details behind Another Earth and kind of forward guidance, I'm just keen to get your take as a CTO of a startup. If there's any advice that you would give someone starting out in this particular sector today.
Mm, bootstrap as much as possible.
Dare I ask why?
I think the current economic climate is just tough. I mean, even if the Earth observations sector is booming, I think everybody in the startup world feels, especially if you have worked in a startup before, it used to be easier. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it is. That's the world we're living in right now, and then it also has advantages. So I mean,
Mm.
being not too dependent on external money is also a good thing.
Well, yeah, it gives you that autonomy, right? It gives you
Exactly,
that full control. There's no sort of outside influences.
exactly. Yeah.
I d- you
I
know
mean,
I,
of course,
I
there are limits to that,
Yeah,
but
of course there
yeah,
is. Yeah, but I think if you can make it work, then yes, I completely get where you're coming from.
yeah,
I don't know what your opinion on this is, but I personally don't feel like we have necessarily recovered from pre-COVID.
yeah,
Um, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about why, but you look at the global political or geopolitical situations that are taking place. It just seems to be one huge global problem after another.
yeah.
It's like a bruise that just will not heal. But hey, we'll see what happens in the coming years.
Yeah.
Hopefully, things start to sort themselves out again. Everything is cyclical, right? So
Hopefully, yeah. And if that
yeah,
happens, then
hopefully,
it's the right moment to start your business.
absolutely that, absolutely that. So you might have touched on it a little bit already. I think you've mentioned the likes of Maya, but I'm very keen to go specifically and dedicate this next section to the story behind Another Earth. Where did the initial idea come from, and what problem were you trying to solve? And I guess what problem are you still trying to solve today?
Yeah, yeah. Well, uh, so originally, I myself had the problem in the first startup I mentioned, which was about gaming technology. I naively assumed it would be, super easy to just take satellite imagery and analyze it, or basically segment it into, forest and grassland and road areas, and proceed with the rest of our technology. And it turned out back then that it's actually not that easy. So this this problem of training AI models, because of the lack of training data, um, combined with this idea of using other technology to create synthetic data, um, which and there comes Maya in, because she was working in the automotive sector, um, or her company was in the automotive space, which was also all about autonomous driving back then, and still is. And this is one of the areas where synthetic data is already quite approved and used a lot, to basically rendering fake videos, which AI models are then trained to recognize passengers. And you see all these little hints, kind of in hindsight, obviously led to the idea for Another Earth, which is creating synthetic training data in this very domain, because it's very special. It's also more way more difficult than creating synthetic data for other domains, where you maybe create like fake tabular data and fake names, or just RGB imagery for autonomous driving. We have to respect all the specifics of our world, which is different sensors, multispectral data, different resolutions, and so on and so on. So it's a much harder problem to tackle, but I think also a much more interesting
Yeah.
problem, and also not not very crowded yet. I mean, there's only a handful of companies working in this space
Yeah.
in the whole world right now.
And I think as well, it's really important to hone in on vulnerabilities. Everyone knows that startups or
Yeah.
large enterprise businesses, it's not linear. It's not an upwards trajectory. There's going to be challenges, right? And I'm keen to understand. You've already honed in on some difficulties around synthetic data. I'm
Mhm.
keen to understand what the biggest challenges in turning the idea that you've had into a functioning company is.
Mm, well, just several, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
I would say technologically, it's of course a challenge, um, and we're not done by far. I think I don't mention this by far. I mean, we're still not yet. We're still, very young company.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, I mentioned 1.5 years. So we're basically still building technology and starting our go-to market as we speak.
Yeah.
And building the technology has been challenging, of course, precisely for the reasons I mentioned. Creating a generative AI model which not only outputs, RGB imagery, but multispectral data or elevation data. Basically, you have to do it on your own, right? You can't use
Yeah.
any pre-existing Google or Meta or whatever model. Um, um, we have to develop it ourselves. Um, but having said that, I think technology has been working out pretty good so far. Um, it's for us, it's the bigger challenge, I would say, is go to market in a way that the market is almost too big. As I said, it's like there's so many possibilities, and of course we can't, solve every problem at once. So we kind of have to find our niche and the best match for our technology. And that has been a bit more challenging. And then also, I think, convincing clients, because it's such a new approach of, training an AI model that sometimes some clients or partners get it right away, and see the potential and what it can do for them. The others are, first a bit skeptical, if they've heard some bad things about synthetic data, or they don't even realize the potential that lies within this technology. So
Mm.
convincing people of what can be done with it has been more challenging than anticipated, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of people watching this who will bookmark your business maybe to apply there in the future
I
should
hope so.
any positions come about. Um, let's say I were to think about applying to your business today. I'd be keen to understand very simply, how did you decide on the name Another Earth, and what does it mean to you?
um, well, it to me, the idea was really we're creating. I think, as far as I know, we're the only company working in this space who's not taking existing satellite imagery and modifies parts of it and inserts objects or this kind of stuff. We are really creating entirely new image data which resembles certain places on Earth. So we have ways of saying now, create a coastal area of the US and western area with this percentage of population. And then the technology creates imagery which is similar but actually doesn't exist. Hence the name Another Earth.
Nice.
It should, I think the second idea was that it's actually the name of of a computer game I quite like from the 90s, but then I realized it has a different name. I think
I'm keen to
it's
understand what game you're referring to there. If do you know the name, or have you
it
lost it?
was no, I forgot. It's like you land on it was a typical jump and run. You land on a planet. It was something Earth, but not another Earth. I think it may be different Earth or something along those lines. It's very old. It's like Prince of Persia one, like age.
Do you know what though? If we're going to talk about games very quickly, you go into the local shops where I live in the UK. You've got I think it's CEX, or some people might call it
Mm,
KEX, and PS1, PS2, GameCube games. They are so expensive nowadays because of the nostalgic value, the
mm,
sentiment. Because people are really embracing their retro gaming selves again.
yeah.
So I love to see it. I think it's great. I myself had a personal favorite. It was a James Bond Nightfire on PS2. That was one for me
Mm,
growing up, and Pro
yeah.
Evolution Soccer as well. So
No,
so yeah.
that was definitely GoldenEye on the
Yes, yes.
N64 was talking about James Bond. That was my game. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, but
Absolutely.
you know
Oh,
what? I will look it up, and I assume there's some kind of show notes for this, so we
yes,
can
absolutely.
we can put a link to the game I'm referring to in the
By all
notes.
means.
Yeah,
Yes.
but it has a
Absolutely
slightly
that.
different. I think Another Earth is actually this a bit cheesy, romantic movie
I like it.
from like
Yeah,
10 years
well,
ago. But yeah,
do you know what? I like the story. I like the meaning. It has purpose. I think that there's something quite poetic and romantic. There are true, genuine, authentic stories behind the reasons as to why businesses started.
no,
Has to come from somewhere.
thanks.
So yeah, no, that's great.
I
That's
dare
great.
to say it was also my idea. So-
I understand. I understand. Well, look, in regards to synthetic data and how it can help Earth observation, the reason as to why another Earth exists,
Mhm.
we are seeing AI models more and more nowadays. How do you see, and do correct me if maybe this question is maybe slightly worded incorrectly, but I'm just keen to understand how you see synthetic data interacting with AI models in the coming years.
This will be a bit longer winded answer, unfortunately, and the reason why it makes sense is obviously also a bit technical, but
Hmm.
yeah, just interrupt me if you don't
No,
understand a word
please. No,
of what I'm
we've
trying
got the
to
time.
explain. Um, so I would say that there are three application layers, so to say, on why to use synthetic data, and each one, at least for me, is more exciting than the previous one. So let's say the first one would be you're training an classic AI model to analyze, I don't know, crop classification, or you want to analyze crop yield, and you have some data, but your model is not very accurate, or it could be better. In that case, we can help with synthetic data by augmenting your existing data sets. Um, what I mean by that is, first of all, you might have only satellite imagery, but you need also land cover data or elevation data, which is either not available or too expensive. We can synthetically add those missing modalities for you, so you can then eventually train a better model. Um, and we can also create entirely new data for you. So let's say you only have 1,000 images, and we can make 10,000 out of it, um, which will again um, make your model better. Or let's say you are working on very high resolution data, and you want to apply it on high resolution data, but to train a model, you would need to buy 10,000 quite expensive images to train your model first. Instead, you can use our synthetic data because we support high resolution data of up to 0.5 meters GSD, and train your model and then apply it to real data or mix as you see fit. So that's I would say the most immediate use of synthetic data. What I think is even more interesting are all those cases where you want to train a model to recognize something with Earth observation data, but you don't have the data to train a model, or you have very little, or you only have the optical data, but you don't have any ground truth labels to train an AI model to learn whatever you want. Let's say you're trying to find a very specific type of plant, which has a very specific kind of disease. I'm not making this up. This is an actual project. We're working on it. So we're working on right now. So traditionally, you would have to, download a lot of data, manually go in and find this very specific plant and label it, and do this 10,000 times to train an AI model. Having said that, I know if you're lucky, you can use various vegetation indices like NDVI and then use the infrared band to calculate the ground truth there yourself. But in some cases, that just doesn't work or isn't very accurate. We can generate not only the optical imagery, but also the required labels to train such a model. So you will get the optical data, you will get height data, you will get land cover data, and also very specific labels for this one thing you're searching for. In that case, in our case, it's a specific type of cocoa plant. But it could be anything, right? Could be for, I don't know, analyzing roofs in urban applications, or whatever. So those are, and then you can start thinking about applications, which nobody has actually even done before because there was no data, it was just not feasible to sit down and label this data. And yeah, I think there's lots of even undiscovered potential use cases in various verticals using synthetic data in that way. And the last, I think for me most exciting application for synthetic data is, let's say in that case you wouldn't actually use synthetic data as training data, but let's say you already have a model with predictive capabilities. For example, to predict the likeliness of a flooding. For example, we're actually working on something in the mining and raw material space with that. But again, could be various verticals. But let's say you have something that can predict something. We can then use synthetic data to simulate scenarios. What happens if you move the road from here to there? We can then not only change the optical data, we can change accordingly the elevation data and all the data you would need to train your model. You can then feed these variations in the model you have, and understand better the future impact of certain changes you do today. I think flooding is a very good example. What happens if we move the river from here to there, or change the height in that way. We can create this fake data, or we like to avoid the term fake data, but it's essentially what synthetic data is. And to simulate those scenarios, and I think that's also a big use case.
Yeah, What I like about what you've said during this episode is the fact that your business, Another Earth, is industry agnostic. It can serve multiple areas, and I do appreciate you mentioned at one point during this conversation that this industry is so large and there's so many different possibilities that you can't answer all the problems. But I do like the fact that your product, ultimately your platform, is multi-purpose, and that it serves multiple areas. You've gone from agriculture to road planning and safety. You've spoken about mining and materials. You've spoken about disaster risk and mitigation and resilience
Yeah,
around flooding. Um, there are just so many possibilities that you can ultimately simulate
yeah.
with synthetic data. And I'm keen to understand, and once again, please do correct me if this question doesn't necessarily make sense. It makes sense in my head here, but do you think synthetic data could lower the barrier to entry for startups looking to come into that Earth observation space?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because one of the problems is that, um, just the cost of this data. I mean, of course, Sentinel data is freely available, but as soon as you want to work with high resolution data, things are starting to get much more difficult. And for certain applications, you just need higher resolutions.
Mm,
Let's say for tree species classification, another project where we're involved right now, for biomass calculations.
yeah.
You need satellite images of resolution where you can, the 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 trees or the individual trees, which is
Hmm.
just not possible with Sentinel data. So definitely it lowers the barrier, for anybody entering the data. And of course,
Sure.
we're not there yet, but
Yeah.
of course, at some point, we will also publish, um, um, test data sets, on our homepage to experiment with, and yeah, and make it much cheaper to work with this data,
Yeah.
effectively in the future.
Yeah, and going back to the economic outlook of where we are at the moment as a world, I think cost is i- you know if not the most important thing um, on many entrepreneurs and business leaders' minds at this
Yeah,
moment in time. So,
yeah.
but of course, innovation can't stop because of that. We must continue. So, looking forward for Another Earth, what's on the near term roadmap over the next 12 to 18 months? If you can't answer that question, I do appreciate that. That's not a problem at all. You might want to keep your cards close to your chest, but is there anything that you can sprinkle in to create some excitement there?
Um, well, from a business perspective, I mentioned that already. We're like heavily in go-to-market process. So, even though you mentioned we're trying to be as industry agnostic as we can, of course we have to focus on something first. So, with of
Sure.
all these possibilities I mentioned, throughout, um, we can't do it all at once. So right now we're deep in the process of finding the first right niche,
Hmm.
for us, and just from the number of vegetation based examples, I think you can already tell that it's very likely for us, to work in this industry first in the upcoming month. Technology side of things, I think the most exciting thing for me or for us will be when we can, finally shows publicly, show our data, publish a couple of papers, about it. That will definitely happen throughout the next year. Probably not before the end of this year, but we don't have much to go. um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I think as well, for any business, large or small, I think it's all about somehow leaving a mark, leaving
mm,
impact, leaving a legacy, if you will. What impact do you ultimately want the company to have on climate, society, or the industry itself?
I think for me personally, the climate space has been definitely the one which is not only a good technological fit to what we're doing, but what is, super important for me. Really anything we can do in that space, to help, well, stopping is not even a thing anymore, but slowing down climate change as much as we can would be, 1,000 times more satisfying than having worked on the Guardians of the Galaxy eventually, to be honest.
Yeah. I wonder what Groot would have to say about that. Yeah, probably just say I am Groot. But
Probably.
although it
That
probably
would have
would,
been my
yeah,
perfect response now. But
yeah. I was going to say, yeah. No, okay, that's good. That's really, really good. And I guess finally, being at the helm of the business, is there anything that keeps you up at night regarding the future of the business, the future of the industry per se?
well, politics and this shift in, also how important the problem of climate change is recognized
Yeah.
from various countries recently is not very it's not very motivating. But I'm pretty sure it will swing back into the right direction.
Yeah.
Sooner or
And
later.
it's so important that people like yourself, continue to move forward and fight on, to utilize that as fuel, inject some energy into that
Yeah.
business of yours and to reach new heights, new milestones. Well, look, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for joining me. I know that the audience would be very grateful for this episode today.
Thank you. Ciao.
Hello, and thank you for watching today's episode of Earth Observed, powered by DeepReg AI. If you're interested in joining me for an episode of your own to discuss a topic of your choice, do get in contact with me. And of course, if you are looking to scale your team within geospatial, Earth data, or atmospheric AI, please do get in contact. I'd love to understand how I can support you. Until next time, have a great day.